So obviously, when we talk about stress becoming strain, there are negative effects. And research looking at the effects of stress basically find a fair amount of negative outcomes. Over approximately 40% feel their jobs are stressful or extremely stressful. So that means that basically 4 out of 10 jobs are being perceived as highly stressful. That means stressors are being perceived as something that, again, that cognitive assessment is resulting in those stressors becoming seen as stress and strain. 36% feel as if they're used up at the end of the day. In other words, they're pretty much feel like they're being cognitively and emotionally exhausted. So that's 1 in 3. 28% work so hard they do not have time or energy to spend with their families. In other words, they feel as if not only are they drained, that they don't have anything left to spend in any other aspect of their life. 1 in 4, 26% feel emotionally drained by their work, and approximately 40% of job turnover is identified as being due to being in a stressful job or a job that results in stressors becoming stress and strain. So obviously there's a lot of negative effects and reasons for organizations to try to reduce the effects of stress in organizations. So negative effects of stress also include task performance. Some individuals perform at a higher level in times of high stress, for example, type A personalities with a limited amount of time. But for most people, higher levels of stress tend to lead to lower levels of job performance. That's what we generally find across most individual types. So again, further evidence that it's important to manage stress and strain in an organization. In fact, in recent years, there's been a lot of research looking at actually counterproductive behaviors in the workplace, including desk rage, lashing out at others' surroundings in a response to stressful encounters on the job. So this can be physical, attacking a computer or a printer, but this can also be in short responses and negative social interactions with those around you due to the fact that you are stressed and strained. All of these, of course, result in negative outcomes. There's also, of course, health-related effects of stress. There's a fair amount of them, and they're listed here, including increased blood pressure, generally speaking, a decreased protein synthesis, muscle aches, headaches, tension, stomach acids. All of these can be directly resulted to experiencing too much stress. And again, that stress is being addressed or being asked to deal with stressors that are above and beyond your self-efficacy and your feeling of time pressure that you can manage. So this also means that those organizations and those jobs that are higher in stress generally also have a greater burnout rate, so people actually leaving the organization because of the stress, but also a greater increase in the chance of people calling in sick and being legitimately physically sick because of the stress. So metabolic syndrome is the result of chronic stress or strain. This syndrome is a combination of factors such as high triglyceride levels, glucose intolerance, that together are linked to serious maladies such as diabetes and hypertension and high blood pressure. So there is a direct relationship between the amount of stress and strain we experience and our health. And again, that's yet another reason why organizations should be thinking about ways to reduce stress and strain. And I've already mentioned burnout a few times, but burnout is a syndrome of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion coupled with feelings of low self-esteem and low self-efficacy. In other words, people feel like they have nothing left to give. Tasks that used to be manageable are no longer being manageable. And this tends to result from prolonged exposure to intense stress and the strain reactions that follow them. So again, we want to be thinking about, and that's why a lot of organizations have days off, vacation times. Even currently, the organization I'm at has some mental health days. So we have multiple days throughout the year where we're not supposed to work and we're supposed to take a break from our typical work. Also, even individually, many organizations now have systems which basically, if you've worked for too long at one time, will actually basically knock you out of your computer system, forcing you to take a 10 or 15-minute break to allow you to recharge. These are all efforts to address and try to stop the process of stress and strain becoming truly burnout. So there's a lot of organizational resources that can be put to trying to address this. And one of the things that I've been talking about is that idea of job design, creating jobs with an awareness of how stressful they're going to be. So some other ones out there include employee assistance programs, often recalled to EAPs, plans that provide employees with assistance with various personal problems, substance abuse, career planning, financial and legal problems. Another example, my workplace, I actually have access to legal counsel, so I don't have to go and find a lawyer if I just have a quick or simple legal question. It's actually provided by my organization, and that's an effort to make it to where I'm not having to be as stressed about things that are going on in my life that might impact my work. Wellness programs, company-wide programs in which employees receive training regarding things they can do to promote healthy lifestyles. Again, I think of a lot of white-collar organizations that actually have gyms on the campus where you work. So it's very easy for you to, during your lunch break, also go and do a workout. Stress management programs, systematic efforts to train employees in a variety of techniques that can be used to become less adversely affected by stress. Massage, yoga, counting to 10. So again, these can be as simple as just providing some resources. Here's 10 things you can do to quickly reduce stress, to actually having organized yoga, for instance. And I've actually know of a few organizations that actually have on company time wine hours and massages available. So again, when we think about managing stress, we want to think about things that we can also do to manage this stress, because not only is it bad for an organization, it's bad for us. We want to manage our time wisely. We want to seek social support. We want to eat a healthier diet. We want to be physically fit. We want to think about times and ways to relax and meditate. We want to make sure we're getting a good night's sleep. And we also want to avoid inappropriate self-talk, not thinking about yourself in the negative. Don't focus on the can'ts, on the not good enough, focus on what you are being able to do, and also be thinking about taking breaks and taking time outs as you go through your workday. So let's talk about a few of these. Time management includes prioritizing your activities, being able to distinguish between tasks that are urgent, important, or routine, and also being aware that you can only get so much done in a day and deciding. I mentioned earlier about putting a task that required some communication on my list to do on Friday. Well, that's obviously Friday's a few days away, but I recognize it's not an immediate task. It needs to be done, and I don't want to forget about it, but I also don't need to immediately get to it. We want to allocate our time realistically, so accurately assess how much time needed to spend on each task. And that's another thing, is I'll often, once my meetings are set for the week, I may actually block out blocks of time to get various tasks done. And that's, again, that taking control of your time, making to-do lists and keeping careful track of what you have and haven't accomplished. Unless something urgent comes up, don't let yourself get distracted. So all of these can be elements that we can take control of to reduce stress and strain in our organizational lives. We definitely want to think about ways to assign priorities. So basically realize that the not important and not urgent is probably the fun block, but also that should be the least important thing to us. But we want to make sure that it's still a part of it. We occasionally want to take the time to have a half-hour conversation with a coworker during lunch. It's not important, it's not urgent, but that's a part of building that social network. We want to also identify things that are not important, but maybe urgent but not important. So someone's visiting and they're only going to be at the company today, and the only chance to talk to them is today, but do you really need to talk to them? Again, if you've got time, definitely worth doing, but it's probably not going to be an important task. And finally, we have those important tasks. Important and urgent should always be the first thing that we're trying to get to. It needs to be done quickly, and it has to be done. But we also need to identify things that are important, but maybe not as urgent. And again, I do a lot of this in my day-to-day work as well. Identifying this needs to be done today, this can be done in a day or two, or this could even be done next week. So there's a lot of prevention and stress prevention approaches, including secondary prevention, taking steps to avoid problems caused by stressors, i.e. staying physically fit. So those are secondary preventions. So basically anything that you're doing to make yourself more resistant to stress, anything that you're doing to make it where you have better capacity to handle stress is a secondary prevention. A primary prevention is attempting to eliminate the stressors themselves. That might be changing the organization, changing the role, and how the role is designed. And finally, there's tertiary preventions, treating symptoms caused by the stressors, having a physician treat employees for various illnesses. And we hope to we want to reduce as much stress as possible through primary and secondary preventions before we start considering tertiary preventions, because tertiary preventions is usually dealing with the aftermath of too much stress and strain. So I want to end this entire module as we're talking about emotions in the workplace, how emotions and moods impact our behaviors, how these behaviors can then determine through individual differences how we handle stressors and strains, our stressors, which may result or not result in them being stress and strains. And I want to end on this bit on social support, the recognition that friendship and support of others will help minimize a reaction to stress. Not only do we find that the more friendship supports you have in organizations, the more likely you are to resist stress. It also means you have a greater network that you can actually reach out to. And I find that I do this a fair amount. I will occasionally reach out to a coworker. Hey, how busy are you this week? I've got something that needs to get done. Can you help me with it? Which also then helps to reduce that appearance of stressors and distress. So it can be cultural norms, for example, having the 4th of July holiday, having Friday lunches. We have an informal meeting every Friday where I work right now where there is no work task. We just talk about things. Sometimes we'll talk about what restaurants have we eaten at? What's our next vacation plans? So these social institutions and these family and friends are all very important to building our sources of social support. And the benefits from having solid social support for all individuals is that boosting of self-esteem. We have people that are rooting for us. It provides us diversion, the ability to take a break occasionally and just talk to someone. And also giving us those needed resources occasionally, that support network when we need them to handle important and urgent tasks or stressors. So hopefully this is giving you a kind of a big picture of how emotions play out in the workplace. I really want you to think about, though, what can organizations do to both design the organization, to design support structures, and to design the job roles themselves to reduce the likelihood of stress and strain, and also to allow people to have the resources necessary to deal with it when it does occur. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. You can either email me or post your questions in the discussion on Canvas. And thank you very much for listening to these lectures. We'll be covering another topic in the modules next week.